Hi guys, Sara here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 11 of Dog...
10.
Oh, sorry. Episode 10. I've been corrected. Of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter, and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
What's going on, Sophie? Give us an update in Dogland.
We took the puppies to the vet yesterday.
So they're 7 weeks.
So they're 7 weeks, and they did pretty well in the car. I mean, they threw up once and pooped once, but that's pretty good for 7-week-old puppies.
I could have done without the poop.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised. I mean,
they were in a crate.
Yeah.
But they then smashed it all over, and then they came out of the crate. A couple of the puppies, covered in poop, which was gross.
Yeah, but I don't know. They're babies. And
I know.
We used to live super close to the vet, and now it's like a bit of a longer drive. So, I think they did pretty well.
They did great. They were good with the vet. They were not, they were as unhappy with the car ride as they were in the vet. It's a lot for them. It's exhausting, and they crash out on the way home. But they all had clean bills of health. He sort of checks their, of course, heart and lungs and eyes and ears and mouth and teeth and all that kind of stuff. Also checks them for umbilical hernias, which are pretty typical in puppies, and they were cleared for that, among other sorts of things. I'm sure he could speak better on than me. But they all have clean bills of health, and then they all got one shot.
Mm-hmm.
So now their next set of shots will be due at 10 weeks, so that will be on the new owners to continue their vaccine regimen.
Yep, but they're doing good. They're definitely getting to the point of wanting to do bigger and better things, because I'm not a big fan in between like 7 and 8 weeks, because they just grow out of their enclosure. They grow out of outside. They just want more attention, and we just can't give it to them. So every time someone's like, oh, it must be so hard giving them away, it really isn't, because in their best interest, it is to have one-on-one time, and we can't give them one-on-one time. Not owning 9 dogs and training dogs, and then on top of it, taking care of 7 puppies. It's just, it's not fair for them. So to be able to give them to people who I know are going to take really good care of them is the best part, I think, of.
Yeah, no, there's satisfaction in that as well. It's not just about raising the puppies and being around puppies for 2 months. It's actually making families happy with really nice dogs.
Yep.
We have a couple of, I think 3 videos from this breeding cycle that went viral on social media. A few 100,000, 500,000 views or whatever on each video. And one of them is the one of Evie when she's laying with her very young puppies. I think they were about 3 weeks at that point. And I've gotten a couple of comments. There's I don't know, something like 14,000 comments on that or something like that. Maybe 14,000 likes and a couple thousand comments. But anyway, a few of the comments are like, and then you're going to take her away from them, or don't take them away. Let her be with them. Like, how does that look? I want to respond, which I don't, to those types of things because people are just ignorant. But like, how would that look if no puppy ever left their mother? How would that world work?
Littermate syndrome?
Well, it's not just that. It's not even that. It's how would that work? Like, so there would only be so many dogs, and they'd all be in single homes with dozens and dozens of dogs, and no one else would get a dog? Like, think about it. What do you mean?
And
leave them with her. What does that look like?
Yeah, no, it's so funny because you can tell it's ignorance, because if you knew anything about breeding, you only need the mother for like the first 4 to 5 weeks, and then the last 4 to 3 weeks are the puppies need to learn how to socialize with one another. So the reason we keep them 8 weeks isn't because they need their mother for that entire 8 weeks. It's they need to be able to develop with one another and create social skills so they can be happy, healthy puppies. But they only need their mother for the first 4 to 5 weeks.
As we do it, yes. Mm-hmm. So that would be the minimum.
Yeah.
And we do the minimum mother care for a reason, because we want our moms to recover quickly and fully.
And be a dog again, instead of having...
go back to their lives.
They're not these... The reason we do breeding and the way we do breeding is because we want to create these very healthy family pets, but we also want to remain, the dogs that we are breeding, we want them to remain as family pets. And, we don't breed them constantly over and over and over again because they're, a factory. We do it because we enjoy the temperament that we're breeding for. We enjoy the process of what's going on. And in the end, the mother gets to be able to be a dog. Like they're not.
Right. She doesn't go back to the kennel.
No.
She goes back upstairs.
Yep. So
and starts to play fetch and go on walks again and come back to being just a family pet.
Household pet.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do that for her in her best interest.
Yeah.
Also, her milk bar will shrink up and go back much quicker if you prevent the puppies from continually nursing on her when they don't need the nutrition. So some breeders will allow their puppies to stay with the mom, until they're 8, 10, 12 weeks old, and they're still occasionally nursing on her. And you see these collapsed milk bars. And I just don't think that's fair to the mom. They don't need that nutrition. You can provide it, right? We're not talking about the wild here. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about a stray dog. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a dog in a household that takes very good care of them. So they don't need the nutrition from their mom. And like you say, that the important part of keeping them till 8 weeks is week 4 through 8 is really about learning canine language, right? Dog language, dog social skills. And they get that from their litter mates, not so much from their mom.
No.
Now, do they occasionally hang out with our adults and get corrected by our adults? Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. But most of what they've learned so far has been from their litter mates. And that's super, super important. As we know, it's very hard to raise a single puppy.
And that's why you'll see certain dogs with behavioral issues if you end up getting it too early. And they'll develop behavioral issues because during the first 12 weeks, you're creating neural pathways of where they're learning how to interact and social skills and what body language is. And if you don't do it within those first 12 weeks, they really struggle in adulthood with being able to make dog friends and create leash reactivity, or it could overflow in other behavioral issues, which is why you see dogs that were taken away really young tend to have really bad behavioral issues because they didn't get it during those really important first 12 weeks.
So honestly, it's easier to replace the mom than it is to replace the litter mates. So if you have a mom who, for some reason, God forbid, something happens to her health-wise, she dies or something in labor, or she's unable to provide milk for them, and you have to get a foster mom or hand feed them. Although that's incredibly labor-intensive for the person, right? And it's hard physically in that way to get them all the right amount of nutrition throughout the hours of every day for the first 3 weeks. It's easier to replace the mom than it is to have a singleton and not have litter mates to teach them all those super important things.
And luckily with our last litter of 2 puppies, we had Tula. So they had kind of like another dog to play with.
And they had each other.
Which
was not great, but it was better than a singleton, which is really hard.
It's you give and you take. I don't know. It definitely is important.
There's a sweet spot. So, between 6 and 8 puppies is a sweet spot. Mm-hmm. More than 8 puppies can be difficult for sure. And of course, less than 4 puppies can be tricky as well. And as we know, 2 puppies are a giant pain in my ass. Yep. Although they turned out to be 2 lovely, lovely dogs, that was no fun. Mm-hmm. I did not enjoy that litter.
Well, because you have to do all the work for only 2 puppies, so it's like...
Yeah, and it's just not as fun because there's just not 7 different sparkly personalities. There's 2. Mm-hmm. And they were super delayed because there's just 2 of them, So that wasn't fun at all. This litter has been super fun and very, knock on wood, we still have 5 or 6 days to go, but very smooth as far as their health and no big bumps in the road, except I guess you could consider Evie's little bout with maternal aggression a bump. But that didn't last long, and we were able to work around that fairly quickly.
Yep.
And learn something.
Yep.
Yeah. So they'll be going to their new homes. 5 of the 7 puppies will be leaving this coming weekend, March 21st through 23rd. And then 2 puppies stay behind.
Yep.
So all the puppies are sold. Smokey, who is going to be Marley, she is staying with us for 5 weeks for training. Mm-hmm. So she's going to be fully crate trained, leash trained, and started on potty training. So she'll be here and doing a lot of work as if she were my own puppy, doing all the same kind of socialization and learning as we did with Tula, for instance.
So she's going to move upstairs. She's going to sleep in your room, all that stuff.
So that's a ton of work for me. So as you can imagine, it's pretty expensive to do. But for these particular clients, it's worth it for them. They have a very busy April with some family stuff that they have to address. So they were not going to have time for the puppy. So for them, it was worth it. And I'm happy to keep her. She's super cute. I love her. And then Roddy is going to stay for about 10, 11 days because his owner cannot take him. He's going to be on vacation, I think, and come back on the 10th. And I think he's going to pick him up on the 11th. So he'll get started on some of the things that Marley is going to be learning. His name is going to be Turtle. He's going to get started. Certainly he'll be crate trained while he's here for those 10, 11 days. And certainly working on just general manners and things like that. And of course, starting housebreaking. But he won't be nearly as far along as Miss Marley will be by the end of April. So that's going to be fun and also a ton of work.
Yep. But like, it's kind of, as I was trying to explain to somebody, like I'm excited for, even though this is like a lot of work, kind of bring them upstairs and stuff. It's like you get to know them one-on-one.
For sure.
So like, it's really fun to go downstairs and play with 7 puppies, but it's a lot more work because you have to like maintain and they're getting really stinky down there too. So, they're pooping inside. You got to clean all that stuff up. They can't really have beds in their
I stopped putting the beds in there.
Because they just pee and rip it up.
It's too much laundry for me. Yeah. And honestly, they need that floor space to run around, not to be blocked by beds. And they just collapse on the floor and spread out on the floor. It's certainly warm enough down there. And we do have cushion under that linoleum floor.
It's just, they're older. And so they need, anyways. So
yeah, they're ready to move on. The clients, all the new owners are super excited. They're really great homes. 2 of them are going to homes that already have our Aussies. One of them has 2 of our Aussies. One out of Remy and one out of Vivi. And then the other home has one out of Remy.
Yep.
So yeah, that's
Meadow?
No, I think it's Remy.
Okay.
I think Blossom was out of Remy.
Okay.
I think she was 2018.
There's nothing for me.
She was a cutie.
Before COVID?
Yes, definitely before COVID.
Was that the double litter?
I don't think so. Might have been. I don't think so. I think it was the year before that. I think it was 2018. Anyway, so that's always a very flattering when people come back. Every litter we have 1 or 2 puppies going to previous puppy buyers, which is very flattering and reinforces that people think we're doing a good job. So that's always really nice. And plus, I don't have to vet them because I already know they're good owners. Yeah. And we usually keep pretty close in touch with many of our owners, particularly because of social media.
Makes it easy.
So speaking of social media, before we get on our topic, I just want to talk about that guy who looked at the same video of Evie laying in the whelping box with her puppies and they're climbing all over her. That's the video that's, I don't know, got 500,000 views or something like that. And I do understand that Evie looks like a border collie because she is black and white, right?
She does have brown on her though. But it's not like, if you see her running from a far distance, you're not going to be like, oh, yeah, that dog is an Aussie.
Mainly, the most brown she has is on her back legs.
Yeah.
And does she have any on her front legs?
She's a little bit on her front legs.
But she looks very like a black bi, so black and white, which is, by the way, totally acceptable in Australian Shepherds. It's unusual. People like more colors than just 2, so they tend to breed for the tries. But she is actually a black tri. But in that video, she looks like people imagine a border collie to look. Imagine Fly from Babe, right? Black and white. And so there's some discussion in the comments, and I review every single comment I get on every single video to try to make sure that my page stays positive and toxic free. And there was some discussion about whether she's a border collie or an Australian Shepherd. And most of the time, my followers will chime in. I don't have to do anything, and they correct any erroneous beliefs for me, which is always nice. But I did one exchange with this one man about her being, he's like, oh, she's a border collie. She's definitely a border collie. And I responded, actually, she's not. I see why you would get confused because of what I just stated. But if you saw her move, you'd know she was an Aussie, not a Border Collie. And the reason I said that is because I was giving him the benefit of the doubt that he knew what the difference between those two breeds is and had some familiarity with them, because anyone who knows Border Collies and knows Australian Shepherds, they can look physically very, very similar, but if you see them literally move, trot along,
completely different
gait, different carriage, the way they carry themselves, because they're for different jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So that's been designed, the Border Collie movement has been designed specifically to herd sheep, right? Mm-hmm. Australian Shepherds can do sheep or cattle, and to be quite honest, are used less as actual stock dogs at this point than Border Collies, which are still very much working dogs. I was actually being really nice and generous, assuming that he knew what he was talking about. So then he responds, and I thought that was the end of it. And then he responds back, I have seen her move. She's 100% a Border Collie.
You don't know what you're talking about then, because she is like a bouncy girl. That's not how Border Collies move. They're very low, very flat back.
He hasn't seen her move, because if he saw her move, he would have had to go to my website, which is called Highland Haven Australian Shepherds.
Well, and the funny thing is if he just looked at your Instagram, she literally was born in this house by two Australian Shepherds.
And my handle is Highland Haven Aussies. It's not Highland Haven Border Collies. So I don't know what this guy's glitch was, but it had me cracking up. I have seen her move. She's definitely a Border Collie. So I typed back something like, well, she isn't, because whatever, I'm an Australian Shepherd breeder and she was bred here and blah, blah, blah. And he said, do a DNA test. Most people think they have one breed and actually have another and don't even know what they're talking about. Do a DNA test and post the results, which
is hilarious.
It's hilarious. And you're like, what the actual, what is wrong with people?
Well, okay,
why are you fighting with someone on the internet about something you know nothing about?
Well, honestly, in my opinion, that says it all, right? I disagree with a lot of things on the internet, and I never comment, because it's I don't really care. I don't really care what your opinion is, because this is what I think my opinion is. I'm not gonna fight with you about it, because I don't have enough room in my day to worry about you. So that says you got a lot of time to think about this.
Does he think I'm masquerading as an Australian Shepherd breeder and I really have Border Collies? I mean, what the... So my response, I just was like, what is wrong with this person? And the whole posted DNA test, I have to prove it to him. But my response was pretty passive aggressive. My response was something like, well, I can see how you might get confused. I can see how people who really don't have any experience with Australian Shepherds or Border Collies might get confused that she could be a Border Collie. However, those of us who know anything about Australian Shepherds can see that she is ASCA registered, Australian Shepherd Club, Australian Shepherd Club of America. She's ASCA registered. She's also dual registered with the AKC, but the ASCA is actually a more stringent registration, because in order to register your dog as an Australian Shepherd in ASCA, they have to have a DNA test.
And they have to
get the registration.
They have to look through lineages and generations of Aussies to trace back that they're
and
all
then you have to send a DNA
Aussies.
In to prove that the pedigree you just sent in is actually the dog that you want registered.
So even though she is technically ASCA by birth, because of a birthright because both of her parents are ASCA registered, so technically she's an ASCA dog because both of her parents are ASCA registered. Even then, you still have to do a DNA test to make sure.
Yeah, because they require, as opposed to the AKC, that does not require DNA, unless I think your male has to have, on his 7th produced litter, has to then get a DNA test, which, I don't want to get into politics about the AKC and how it's a money-making scheme kind of a thing. But why would you not require DNA? A registry that's serious about the integrity of their pedigrees and the dogs that they are registering should require DNA for all dogs. And that's what ASCA does. So anyway, my comment was, she is ASCA registered, and those of us who know anything about Australian Shepherds in America is in order to get the registry. She had to have a DNA test. And then guess what happened? He deleted all the comments and blocked me.
Shame response.
Which was so hilarious. It just made my day.
And he started it. You finished it.
I wasn't rude to him. I was just pointing out facts. It just cracked me up that...
Well, why would you go on social media and fight with somebody about
what they're...
what they do for a living?
I don't get it.
Like, I would never go online and fight with a plumber on how they did plumbing underneath somebody's sink. I don't know anything about plumbing. What do I know? Nothing. And if I had any questions, guess what? There's such a thing called Google. You just go on Google and look it up and see if you were right or not without having the shame of getting rejected.
I don't know, just all that effort into arguing with me about something that is so obvious, right? When he could have taken all that energy and just gone to my profile and seen her parents and seen her litter and that she was bred here and gone to my website and see that they're registered. You know, most of our dogs are dual registered, AKC and ASCA. Take some of that energy and actually do 2.5 seconds of research and then don't argue with me about stuff that's an actual fact. It's just cracks me up. Jacob was like, oh, you don't do TikTok, which is crazy. And I'm like, TikTok is a cesspool. TikTok is mean. I'm afraid to do TikTok because people come at you at TikTok. Nuts people. I have to say, my little corner of the world in Instagram is really a very positive place. And for the most part, I don't have trolls. For the most part. Every once in a while, one will pop up. Easy enough blocked. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's my little Instagram story. For those of you can't see the comments because he threw in the towel and deleted everything and then blocked me, which is hilarious.
Shame response.
Sarah 1, follower 0.
Random guy 0.
Exactly. All right, so let's get on with the topic of the show. What is the topic?
So I thought because, I don't know, I was just thinking of different topics we could do today, and I thought a good one would be, how do you find a perfect dog for your lifestyle?
So picking a breed that fits you. Mm-hmm. We've kind of danced around this in a lot of different episodes, and we've talked directly about it in parts of other episodes. But, I guess we could just break it down how we would do it and why it's so important.
Yep.
So definitely, I guess my hope would be that people take as much time picking a dog breed as they do a car.
Or something that they find valuable. I find cars really valuable, so I make sure to do a lot of research before purchasing a vehicle. If you find, I don't know, buying your favorite book super, I just feel like this is a living thing that's coming into your life, and they're going to have certain predispositions based off of breed, based off of if you have kids, if you're older, if you are an outdoorsy person, if you live in an apartment, so pick a breed based off of your lifestyle would make life so much easier. And
I like the car analogy because people do spend a lot of time picking their cars and they have to fit their lifestyle. So you're not buying a sport, for the most part, you're not buying a sports car, like say a Corvette.
If you have little kids.
If you have children, right? Small children, and that's going to be your, vehicle that you have the kids in, or say you commute every day. Very, very few people, and some people do, I suppose, but very few people commute in a car like a Corvette.
Yeah, true.
Right? They're going to buy the minivan if they have small children for the most part. So, and there's so many different types of cars and they all have specific functions, right?
Well, and you're going to buy a minivan that fits your type of lifestyle. And there's a lot of different types of minivans that you can buy.
Yeah. So you can get a minivan, but then, pick within that pool of minivans the type that you like the best, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be akin to picking a dog from the sporting group and then narrowing it down to a dog within that sporting group, right? Mm-hmm. So I like the car analogy.
No, that is a good analogy.
People don't do that though. People don't generally impulsively buy cars, probably just because they're so incredibly expensive, right? But they tend to think about it more because they have to use this vehicle every day, right? Or they have to be able to afford it. if we just talk about cars that people use for everyday use instead of, like the third car in the family that you use that's like a hobby car.
Yeah.
Right? They think about it because they're like, well, I'm going to have to use this car for this, this, and this function. Let me get a car that fits those functions. And people, by and large, don't, or more often than not, do not do that when picking a dog.
Not at all, in my opinion. But, that's why we
They
have
do.
jobs.
They do. We get a lot of calls for people who are interested in Aussies, and they do say to me, I'm very active. I know they're very active. They need a lot of stimulation. People do that kind of research for sure. That doesn't mean that the configuration of their lifestyle will actually fit that dog. But they do research. They do. I want to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Not all people, but some. We can't paint everybody with the same brush.
And I always think of all the dogs at Dogtopia. And I was like, ugh. You picked the wrong dog for you. Why did you get a German Shepherd and you didn't bring him to daycare every day when you live in an apartment? That doesn't make any sense. Just because you like the way he looked, you know?
Or like they come to it with this completely false idea that all they have to do is treat the dog well and love the dog, and the dog will return the favor and be safe and affectionate and loving dog. And that's actually not true. What a wonderful world it would be if that's all we needed to do.
Well, we wouldn't have a job. So
all of this stuff would mean that we wouldn't have as many clients. I still would like that world. I was telling you a story about that guy that I read in People magazine today. I don't know if he's maybe he was on The Bachelor or something. But anyway, he has a young family, and they decided to adopt a 7-year-old boxer. And he was viciously attacked by this dog, not once but twice over the span of 24 hours.
And he's like
220 pounds, big guy.
Yeah.
And he could barely fight this dog
A
off.
7-year-old boxer.
Right. And he does say, had it been his wife or his children, that dog would have killed the kids and perhaps the wife as well. And he happened to be home alone. He was able to fight the dog off. Then the dog broke out of the enclosure that they put it in the next day and attacked him again. And you read the story as a dog trainer, you read the story like, oh man, that's really scary and fucked up, right? And then you continue down the page, and it brings up his Instagram post of how they adopted this 7-year-old dog from the shelter with small children in the house.
Yeah. Honestly, like if I would steer people away from adopting a dog from a shelter, especially an older dog from a shelter when you have little kids, I mean, just
let's just talk about the big handful of things you need to think about before you get any dog, right? It's do you have small children, or are you about to have small children, right?
Yep.
So if you're newly married and you're going to start a family, that should very much impact what breeds you narrow down, right? Or if you already have a young family, right?
So like, I'm 25, so I'm definitely like looking more towards like eventually having a family, like relatively soon, hopefully.
In the next 5 or 6 years, for sure.
And so I know that Twiggy's only 3. My girlfriend's dog's only 3. So the next dog that we end up getting together, we're going to have kids. So we know we're going to have to downsize dogs because we're not going to have time to take care of an Australian Shepherd, which is much higher drive and more like a sports car, where like young people buy sports cars, or older people who have time will buy a sports car, right? I'm going to be more looking for a minivan that I don't really have to pay too close of attention with, but is there and reliable and safe around my children, So, but that's 5 years ahead of what I'm thinking of.
So that's one thing, right? Your household configuration now and in the near future.
Yes.
What is it going to look like, right? You want to give me another criteria?
Your age.
Okay.
So, I always recommend for people who are on the older side.
Older side being
like, if you're handicapped, if, puppies are a lot of work. And I think people forget how much work they are. So when you're not, in your 70s or 80s and your oldest dog dies and you go out and get a puppy, that's a lot of work. You don't remember how much work puppies are. You don't remember you have to bring them out all the time and wake up early and, do all these things.
I'll be honest with you, the biggest thing for me, and I'm 56, so I'm not in my 60s, 70s, or 80s yet, is bending down, to be honest. Just the sheer amount of bending you have to do, and my back has been really bothering me in the last several months. So the sheer amount of bending down I have to do with these puppies is
a lot.
It's a lot. So that is, it seems like a weird factor, but definitely if you are, say, 60 and older, definitely that's a huge factor in size, energy level, and age of the dog that you should consider. Now, people in their 60s or 70s might be listening to this being like super offended, but I think most of them would be like, yeah, you're right, because you do have physical limitations. They're real at this point. Now, that's not to say that somebody like you can't suddenly be injured and have a disability, right? But that's a
percentage,
chance we take, right?
Yeah.
When you're getting older, you are absolutely going to be more impacted physically, especially with a large, high energy dog.
Yep.
Like, for instance, we have this German Shepherd who's here for training, who's a lovely dog, such a sweetheart, loves people. And this is really your first German Shepherd that you really worked with. I raised German Shepherds when I was in my 20s, so I love the breed. Note, I don't have them. And I mean, for you, you've talked about how you just would love to have one, but it's not in the cards.
No, right. I get the appeal. Right. I think they're beautiful. They walk nice. They kind of have that same shepherd drive that I like with Aussies.
You feel like a big shot when you're walking a big German Shepherd.
You feel just like awesome walking this dog, and he's beautiful and he has this beautiful gait. But then I realized that you can have like a 90 to 100 pound German Shepherd, and that's so unrealistic, especially with they're very anxious. Like, I didn't realize how anxious they are, which I knew, and I know we've talked about it, but then working with him, it's like everything is anxiety inducing, and anxiety can quickly turn ahead and be something else. Luckily, he's really good with people, but most German Shepherds are not like him. They're very quick to use their mouth or to use guarding tendencies. So, you also have to think about what are their natural abilities. Like, I'm not going to be, guarding is natural for them. So I'm not going to be upset when he's deciding to guard something. I have to be aware of this is a behavioral trait that comes with the breed,
Right. And they're very much family oriented. Like these are my people.
Yep.
And there's the inner circle, and then there's everyone else.
Yep.
Right. This dog is sort of an outlier in that he loves all people, which is a wonderful, wonderful trait for him. But most German Shepherds are not like that. And that's not to say that they can't be neutral with new people, but they're not, again, like the proverbial golden retriever.
Right? We're also talking about jaw strength today on the walk.
Yes.
So he is really anxious to the point where we have had him in a regular old crate, wire crate, and he has completely destroyed
it.
Yeah, completely and when I say shredded, I've been around town with dogs trying to escape crates, so I'm very good at reinforcing it and putting extra clips in places, zip tying it, and he has managed to get out of every single loop. And not only that, the welded part together, he's completely ripped the wire welding part off and chewed through multiple clips. Luckily, he's not a consumer. Luckily, he hasn't gotten hurt. Right. So but
he does have a nasty bout of kennel nose.
Yeah. So
because he's been working diligently, and we've had him for 10 days now. So we did narrow it down finally to seeing the patterns. So it's during the day when he hears activity elsewhere in the house that he tends to become he has a terrible case of FOMO, I like to say, fear of missing out. So, and then he gets anxious, and then he tries to break out of the crate. And he tore up the tray. So I had to take the tray out. So it's just this series of taking more and more away from him. And he couldn't even be in the actual enclosure.
No, because he started
breaking out. And let me tell you,
out.
we created enclosures that are pretty bomb-proof. I mean, 3.5 of the walls are painted concrete block. The floor is painted concrete.
And the doors that we installed in there are meant for dogs. So it's really durable metal.
Yeah.
And he broke out the first twice.
Day. Yep.
Twice.
First day he was here.
So, And
at that point, Sophie and I are he can't be wrecking the actual facility. So at that point, when they become destructive like that, then they go into a crate because a crate is $100. I don't want my facility to actually be, destroyed. So he went into a crate, and it's been like this arms race with him, right? Every
just
time
like
we fix
more
it, he comes up
clips.
with something
Yeah,
else.
it's crazy.
So yesterday, after the last shredding of the crate, we ended up investing in an impact crate, which is the really super durable, like you could put a wolf in it, metal crates with the air holes in them, and it's designed for dogs that have high anxiety and are destructive. But to get back to jaw strength,
he ripped the metal welded piece completely from the bottom of the crate, which is insane.
right? But aside from that, you gave him a bone. So we So we do the natural bones. They're actually rib bones. We do those specifically because they're the right hardness.
Yeah, they're not like, so like if you go and you buy those, like you go to
joints.
Yeah, the joints. So like any like arm bone to like cattle and stuff, because it's holding thousands of pounds of weight, those bones need to be really, really strong. Right. And so a lot of the times you'll go to like Petco or PetSmart and they're like filled with peanut butter, and then your dog eats all the peanut butter off of it, and you just have this like round hollow bone that they never chew through because it's like intense, super intense and durable bone. So what we do is we get rib bones because they are durable, but they're not meant to hold 100 pounds. They're just meant to protect the cattle.
Right. So they can actually consume them. And our dogs do consume them. So once a week, as many of you know, we do Super Bone Sunday. And the dogs each get a rib bone, smoked rib bone. And they consume sometimes the whole bone, usually half of it. They'll break it in half. They'll eat the marrow. And over time, they will consume the whole bone. But usually it takes a week or two.
Yeah.
So you gave one of those to Lenny.
Yep. And usually,
the German Shepherd.
And our dogs will take like an hour to, like 45 minutes to an hour to like get to that point of like either finishing it or cracking the marrow open and eating most of it.
Right. So
but it takes a while.
Gnawing it down to say half its size is more typical for our dogs. Yeah. Spend an hour gnawing it down.
Yeah.
But Lenny,
he finished the entire bone in 15 minutes.
Right. So chewed the entire thing.
And I was watching him to make sure he wasn't chewing like swallowing big chunks of bone. Mm-hmm. He was chewed the entire bone to nothing in 15 minutes.
Okay. And I said to you,
wow,
really shows you the difference in jaw strength between a German Shepherd and an Australian Shepherd.
Yep.
So German Shepherds have been bred for jaw strength because for the last 100 years they've been used in police and military work, right? So they've actually really specifically bred them for that jaw strength. So that really is a good example of the difference in the two breeds. And, I've been bitten by Australian Shepherds.
Yeah.
It's bad enough.
Yeah, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
But that is a factor playing in, and I would not have a German Shepherd around little kids. And on top of it, like when I was a baby and you guys had like the 5 dogs, like it was very important because you guys kind of came together with the dogs that you had. It was really important for you and Dad to like make sure I wasn't involved during like those toddling periods, and you had me behind a gate and made sure none of the dogs were in my space and I wasn't in their space, and could potentially something bad could happen, because in the end it wouldn't really be my fault because I'm 1 or 2, and it wouldn't really be the dog's fault because I probably put my finger in their eye or in their nose or whatever, and that, I'm sorry, but like that's a correction for a dog. If another dog did that to him, you would correct it.
So we had a nice sized kitchen and it had 2 entrances, so we just put gates at the 2 entrances so the dogs could still be, and we spent a lot of time because it was sort of like a kitchen family room
living
kind
room,
of a thing. So there's like a TV and stuff in there. So whenever you kids were not in your cribs or in your bedrooms, you were in the kitchen with us. And that's where we spent most of our time. And this way the dogs can lay on the other side of the gate and still be in our lives, but not in your space.
Yep.
And then once you guys were not, you were in your rooms or in your crib or whatever, then I would be in the living room with all of the dogs. And that was just, it made me feel more comfortable. And to be fair, you were little interlopers. They had been around their whole lives with me, and this little weird, loud, smelly interloper comes into the picture. It's quite stressful for dogs.
Yep. And even, and that's with a lot of management and understanding of dog breeds and what you wanted to like give them and have the understanding of like this is strange and weird and different. I don't know where I was going with that. But even with like purposely getting a smaller dog and like there are still damages that your little dog can do to your child as well.
So I think we need to sort of narrow the topic down. So that was a very long description of criteria 2, right? Family situation. Oh, I think it was 1. 2 was age, right? Any other major criteria?
If you live in the city compared to like if you live in the suburbs.
Good one. So your actual physical living space, right? Also, I think another big one is your personality.
Yeah.
That's a harder one for people because you really have to have self-awareness, and many people don't. Knowing what type of dog works for you. I like to run things. I like to boss things around. So herding dogs are perfect for me. Livestock guardian dogs,
well, and
terriers would
Beth,
not be good with me.
Beth was talking about how she loves Great Pyrenees, and then she described the type of dog she likes, and it was exactly a Great Pyrenees. Right. So you need to have your kind of understanding. So like even though she worked for a while with Cocker Spaniels and breeding them and all this stuff, she figured out in her like 30s or something, she said that she liked more of a big, chill, beautiful dog that she didn't have to do anything with.
Parallel companion. But not interface. She also doesn't like to be licked. So she likes that sort of, I call it like a piece of art in the house, like living art, right? They sort of lay there. They're very affectionate when you want them to be, but they'll sort of guard you and be on the periphery of your life and be happy doing it. I think that's a hard one for people because they want the dog that looks a certain way and they don't want to think about whether they match their personality or they have a distorted view of what their personality
What do you think the number one breed people get because they're beautiful and then are just like, oh no?
I don't know.
Huskies. People get huskies and they're beautiful and they look so regal. They're not regal at all. They have crazy drive. You can't keep them off leash, but you need to exercise them. You can't have them in an apartment because they'll like literally rip the doors off the hinges, like chew through the walls. So you have to crate them. They can stay out in the snow and just leave them outside. And
not good for apartments because they're extremely vocal. So you'll get evicted because they're howling and carrying on over nonsense.
You have to do like a de-shutter on them and you'll take them to the groomers. And if you don't like introduce them to the groomers appropriately, they can become really mouthy in the groomers and then scream the entire time and your groomer hates you. I think huskies, and Poppy got you a husky when you were growing up, and it was not a good fit for your family.
No, it wasn't. Although she was a very affectionate dog, and we loved her because that's always how it turns out, right?
And they're killers.
Yeah, they're killers of small animals. And back in the day, huskies used to be fairly dog aggressive. I don't think that's so much now. And that's not to say that you can't get a nicely bred husky and have it be a lovely companion with the right training right from the start. But there is a bag of personality traits that come with huskies that can be quite challenging.
And they're not really compatible to like the average person's lifestyle, I would say. We're like trying to think of like a breed that's really compatible, like a pug. Super, because we've bred them to specifically be lap dogs. Pugs can pretty much adapt to almost any lifestyle except for maybe exercise.
Right. Yeah, they can't really be
or
out
the
in the
heat.
Yeah.
But so it's tricky because if I didn't understand anything about dogs, I would totally get some dog that I had nothing about and then have all these bags of problems.
Well, we can go back to, we could talk about the whole doodle situation. So many people and trainers are so anti-doodle. I think that's maybe not short-sighted, but maybe doesn't take the whole picture into account. Like, I don't know. I've been around for a long time now. I've been in dogs for 40-something years. I've seen different dog breeds come and go and become super popular. And there have been times when it's been a dangerous disaster, right? we can talk about German Shepherds in that regard,
Well,
right?
German Shepherds, Cocker Spaniels.
Well, at least Cockers are small, although they
Yeah,
did go
but
through a terrible
aggression.
aggression phase because of they became so popular and they were overbred and the aggression came out for sure. You know, you can talk about Frenchies. There's super popularity of Frenchies right now.
Super popular, but expensive. If you want to spend a lot
Sickly.
of money on a dog for no reason, get a Frenchie.
Yeah.
Which is fine if that's what you wanna
They're hard
do.
to train and they're hard to housebreak and they're smelly, very smelly. And they're, you know, people love
They're
them
stubborn.
because they are obstinate and funny and stubborn in that way. And I can certainly appreciate a Frenchie. That's not mine. I don't
From
want to live with
afar.
one.
Yep.
But they're a very specific breed as well. And you really have to have tens of thousands of dollars in your savings account ready to take care of a
A
Frenchie.
bulldog too.
Bulldogs too.
Not very smart. They'll
So to
eat
get back
anything.
to my point with doodles is I've seen the rise and fall of breeds that have been really dangerous to people. Dalmatians is one of them. So when you're talking about the popular dog being a doodle, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I understand it is actually a mixed breed, and we can put that out. But you know, it's not going away. It's like when people complained about cell phones. People, they're not going away. Learn how to use your smartphone. It's not going away.
I mean, the thing with doodles, and I think why they are such a good family pet, is they're so forgiving. You
Yes.
can mess up 1,000 times and they'll be like, I still love you. And don't worry, I won't bark at that dog and I won't jump on the kids. Or maybe I'll jump on the kid once, but then you'll just tell me not to and I won't do it again. They're so biddable.
Or they'll do it 50 more times, but they're
Lightweight.
lightweight.
It's not a lab
they
jumping on you.
generally are, you know, most doodles are 40 pounds and under. Of course, there's golden doodles, actual golden doodles, which are big
Yeah,
dogs.
or the
They're
Bernedoodles
Bernedoodles,
and-
not the minis. And of
For
course,
me,
they're all
it's
them.
all the mixtures that they're coming out with that don't logically make sense. That's what frustrates me about this whole doodle trend. Like we should not be mixing a Newfoundland and a doodle
Agree.
together. That is crazy. Anyways,
Yeah, so those are sort of the fringes, but you're talking about your traditional Labradoodle,
like Australian Labradoodles.
golden doodle, the Aussie doodle, you know, the Australian Shepherd / poodle. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. It's not my cup of tea, but I don't hate them. And I think, you know, they're much more forgiving than some of these other breeds that have been popular in the past.
The only thing that I don't like about mixing specific breeds, and because it's a mix, is they might look super doodly and have the personality of an Australian Shepherd. So you're thinking you're getting like more of a doodly dog because it looks doodly. In reality, they're super reserved with people, high drive, need a lot of exercise. So it's kind of like a crapshoot. Like sometimes you might get a dog that looks like a Bernese Mountain Doodle, and then it turns out they're super doodly and they have that like nice edge to them. You know, that's the problem with mixes, is they're not regulated compared to like an
They're not standardized, for sure. And that's the beauty of
An
the purebred
Australian
dog, right? Because
Labradoodle,
you
I
can
feel like is
invest more in the knowledge that you're going to get behaviors that have been bred into that dog for decades or hundreds of years or even thousands of years, depending on the breed, for sure. I think the standard doodle that we see today, the most common doodle, like you say, are very forgiving. Golden retrievers and Labradors, there's a reason that they're wonderful family dogs, because they're very, very forgiving, and by and large are very people friendly, which is nice. You know, there's certain breeds that you can really make a ton of mistakes with, and come to us when they're 4 years old, and we can still come right back from the brink and make a really nice dog. Whereas when you take a dog like a German Shepherd, a 7-year-old German Shepherd, you know, he's had 7 years of rehearsing behaviors that are really unpleasant, and it's much harder for him. An Australian Shepherd, much less forgiving. An Australian cattle dog, make one mistake and you're cooked. I mean, there's certain breeds, Malinois, very unforgiving. There's certain breeds that are just incredibly unforgiving and not really suitable for a person who's not almost a professional.
Well, how I see it is I think people need to look at like a cattle dog. And if you're doing research, these little tiny, cute little babies are meant to grow up and bully a giant bull 50 times its weight, and you want it to not herd your kids around and not put its mouth on your children, which are like nothing compared to a bull, like essentially I always think of a cattle dog as it is the Malinois of herding dogs. Like they are insane. And there's this one guy, and he rehabilitates aggressive.
Just so you know, Malinois is a herding dog, but whatever.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. But I was thinking, oh yeah, shepherd. I don't know, whatever. But I just...
Definitely Malinois type.
Yeah, and so there's this guy, and he rehabilitates, quote unquote, I'm going to say aggressive cattle dogs. And because they are so naturally not forgiving, and they have to use their mouth, if you come at them from a very specific angle and understand where that behavior comes from, you can take that aggression that it's showing and kind of flip it on its head if you know what you're doing, and you can really get them back to normal.
And you know what? The average person doesn't know that.
No, and
doesn't want to know that.
Do that. They don't want to do that.
If they did, they'd become dog trainers.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not the type of dog trainers like everybody should, educate themselves and work really hard and train their dogs
and have
day
them in
and night.
A perfect heel. And
people don't want to train their dogs. They want their dogs to be nice family companions. 9 out of 10 people. They don't want to be, a slave to this dog and this dog's drive. So we talked about
age,
family status, living space, personality, right? What are some other factors? I always, anybody who gets a terrier should be given a medal. That is a group that is so difficult. And I love talking to real terrier fanciers, because that group is like the polar opposite of, say, herding people. Herding people are very controlled, very structured, very bossy, right? If you try any of that with a terrier, you're going to have nothing but headaches and bite marks on your hands and arms. So terrier, and that's why the terrier group is by and large not a very popular group, because they're difficult dogs to live with. You have to be very, you have to find humor in their insanity. So
not my vibe.
Not my vibe at all.
I'm bossy, just like you. Or I think I give a lot of credit to people with hounds. I could not live with a hound.
I mean, but a hound is still, I guess hounds,
they don't listen.
They're not that different from terriers, right? Because they're used to, hunt and whatnot. And the terrier is basically a hunting dog, right? Either you're letting them loose in your barn to kill vermin,
yep,
right? Or you're actually hunting, I don't know, what do Airedales hunt? Bears? Who the heck knows?
Really?
I want to say bears.
I don't know a lot. Airedales are like one of my least favorite breeds, so I don't know a lot about them. But I always think of like beagles are meant to run in the woods and scream to alert you that there's a raccoon or a badger or a rabbit or whatever. And then you're going to have this dog scream in your house. Oh my God. And let me tell you, I think they're so cute. Hounds are such cute puppies. I get it. If I went into a shelter and I saw that floppy little cute head with those big eyes and those droopy lips, I would pick that baby up and play with it too. I just wouldn't bring it home. I'd be like, here you go. Here's it back. Thank you very much for your time. And I would go about my day. They're just insane. Oh.
I mean, I think for working with terriers as puppies, right? Bringing them through training as young dogs really does bring your training to a whole new level.
Yeah,
right? Because you really, like the Australian cattle dog, you really have to let it go, sort of go with the flow and let your whole control thing just disappear.
I think that's why I struggle with Twiggy so much, and she's not even bad at all, but she just has a little edge to her, and that edge just makes me mad because I'm just like, well, I don't understand. Lenny is such a nice dog. Just leave him alone.
Well, I feel like Twiggy is you in dog form. You're really very well trained. very sweet, and you have a bit of an edge to you.
You're not wrong. Maybe it's just karma being
I
like,
don't know what is Jacob. What do we think Jacob is?
Deacon.
Well, he's definitely not a herding dog.
Oh, as a dog? Oh.
I'm lazy.
Maybe he's a
You Great Pyrenees.
maybe he's a livestock guardian. So.
I'll take that.
You just sort of like to be in the vicinity, but not interact too much. At least with me.
I was talking about we were outside hanging out with Summer, and I was like, if you were any dog, what kind of dog would you be? And I love giving this question to random people, like especially like people who are into dogs and like understand breeds and stuff, because like there's so many different dogs you can pick and like decide what you are. And she goes, oh, I don't know, blah 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 blah, what do you think I would be? And I was like, a Portuguese water dog.
That's actually
Right?
pretty good. Yeah.
Right? Because they're really biddable, but they're active, but they can turn off really easy. They're smart, but they don't always have to use their smartness. They're cute. They love a good hairstyle. They're a nice size. You can get them in a variety of colors. I love a good Porty.
Yeah. Porties are nice when they're trained nicely. They can be idiots when they're not. I suppose any dog can be. All right. So do we have any other criteria to consider before you get a dog? And we can talk about mixed breeds in there. You know, if you want to get a rescue dog, fine. But in my experience, anecdotally, dogs act most like the breed they look most like. So if you have a Beagle Portuguese water dog mix and they look very beagle-y, in my experience, you better be prepared for mostly Beagle attributes, personality attributes.
I think it's really important when you're looking to adopt a dog to be okay with bringing that dog back in a month or so if you need to, because it doesn't fit your lifestyle.
There's so much, we talked about this briefly before, there's so much information at your fingertips about breeds. And, you know, when I was your age, if I had to look up a breed, I literally had to
bring one of these books.
In a book, right? And the problem with the books is it's a small pool of people writing those books. And those people back in the day had were sort of gatekeeping their breeds, right? So if you're a breed fancier and you write a book about that breed, there's some amount of gatekeeping that goes on in the dog world, right? Of course, with the internet, there isn't. There's almost an infinite number of sources that you can read that will give you different opinions about what to prepare for different breeds, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you and I do that. If we get a breed that comes to us, or a mix that comes to us with a predominant breed that we are not terribly familiar with, you know, we haven't worked too much with or at all, we will research it, just very simply research it, so we can be prepared for maybe some of the behaviors we see and how to work around them. So, you know.
Oh, I have a good example. We were working with that wire hair pointing Griffon, and I've worked with them before, and we were wondering what the difference is between GSPs and wire hair pointing.
No, not GSPs, wire hair pointers. So German wire hair pointers, GWPs, and wire hair pointing Griffons, because they look so similar. You're giving me a look.
Okay, that's not what I thought we were talking about. I thought we were talking the difference between pointers and the difference between wire hair pointing Griffons. I thought they came from the same bloodline. You're talking about a dog that looks like a wire hair pointing Griffon?
No, the German wire hair pointer. Do you not realize that wire hair pointing Griffons look almost exactly like a German wire hair pointer?
Oh, I thought they were the same thing.
Ah, okay.
I was so okay. So the one at that other job that we were working at, the one that we were doing, I was learning how to do e-color with. That's what you were comparing it to?
Was he a German wire hair pointer, or was he a wire hair pointing Griffon?
I thought he looks very different than the one we had.
I think he was a German wire hair pointer.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because he had a lot of drive.
And he was bigger.
Yeah.
Big. So, yeah, but they look incredibly similar. Yeah, those are two different
Well, I thought they
breeds.
were the same dog, so that's what...
Yeah, so that's why I looked up the differences, the breed characteristics of the German wire hair pointer and the wire hair pointing Griffon. Even between the German wire hair pointer and the German short hair pointer, there are some things that are different.
Interesting.
And remember, we always talk about if you're adding wire hair in there, you're going to add an element of toughness, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why I was interested in looking that up and seeing the difference, because it's like, why are you breeding two dogs who look, and they're from the same part of the world, sort of Bavaria, kind of Germanic kind of thing.
And they do a similar job.
Right. So why do we have two different breeds that look so similar doing different jobs? And what I discovered or what I read about was
that so it's wire hair pointing Griffons. They are meant for like the leisurely hunter,
the gentleman hunter. Yes.
So who's just kind of walk around the woods and then stop and find game, and then that dog needs to stay in close proximity and not be sent out in the bush to find whatever it is.
And a German wire hair pointer is for more intense hunting, right? So needs more drive.
Yeah.
The wire hair pointing Griffon, it was described to me as, it's sort of the Downton Abbey sort of form of hunting, right? Just going out with a group of gentlemen, of lords and whatever, earls, and sort of with the gun in the crook of your arm, walking around leisurely. And then occasionally
a pheasant or this or
exactly.
that comes up. And
so therefore
we were working on off leash stuff with him. And once we we kind of understood the concept of the breed, but then once we were curious and we looked it up, we were like, oh, he's going to do great off leash because he's just like an Australian Shepherd. His natural instincts are to stay close to the person. So he's not going to just take off into the woods
like a German short hair pointer.
Yeah, over game and then get lost and die in the woods.
Right.
Like he's going to stay relatively close.
But we did that research because we wanted to be very prepared for breed characteristics to come out, right? So it
and we
seemed,
also were curious of he was not into birds as much. We did a lot of
to
leash
have a high
work.
drive.
Yeah,
right.
Even when we had the long line on him and he saw a bird, he would look at a bird and crouch, and then he would be like, smells good over here, and turn in a different direction. He didn't have that same drive that I was used to seeing, because I thought it was we were comparing two different dogs.
So yeah, I mean, he seemed to be the type of personality that would do well off leash, right? When we were working with him for the first 2 weeks, I was like, I don't see the off leash being an issue, and that's specifically why he was with us, right? But out of an abundance of caution, then I wanted to then research it and make sure that I was not misreading what I was seeing here, and then coupled with learning who he was for 2 weeks, and then reading about his very specific drilled down breed characteristics, I was like, okay, it all makes sense to me. I feel more comfortable. And then we were more comfortable working with him off leash out in the world than we would have been had he been a German wire hair pointer.
Yeah, so that's what I thought he was. And I thought we were comparing him to just a regular old GSP. And I was like, that's so weird that they gave them wired hair if they're not going to have more drive and be wrestling vermin and stuff to protect themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, kind of like the Italian Spinoni, the Spinoni Italiano.
Yeah, they're super chill too.
They're super chill also. So maybe, although I have not researched them in the same way, may also be the same sort of leisurely hunter. Right, exactly.
Then why would they give it I guess that was a question we'll never know.
It's a stupid name. A wire hair pointing Griffon is just a mouthful.
Well, but why would you give a leisurely dog wired hair? Do you think it's basically because of looks? He looks like that really tough dog, but he's not.
Well, maybe he still has to go through brambles, but not as intensely.
Interesting.
Who knows? Anyway, so my point is that even we need to do the research when we're working with an uncommon breed, like a wire hair pointing Griffon is pretty uncommon, and we don't see much of them. So I have no problem doing, I try not to go into breeds that I don't have a lot of experience with great humility. Let's make sure that we are prepared for some of these breed tendencies before we just go headlong in believing that we know what we're going to see. to make sure that we're going in the right direction and working with them in the way that's going to be positive and effective.
Yeah, and
ultimately.
understand that like this behavior that they're doing is like a normal behavior or not. Like, is this a behavior I should be disciplining, or is this a behavior that I can't discipline because
That I
it's
need
part
to
of
manage,
their
right.
Yeah. So like everything is, it's a balancing game of
for
like
sure.
whether I should manage this behavior or whether this is not a normal behavior and I should be telling him that he's not allowed to do this behavior
Right,
for whatever
exactly.
reason. So
Yeah, interesting. And of course, like people, dogs are individuals, so there can be outliers within each breed. So, sometimes that happens to us as well. They don't act breed specific at all. And it's a shock. But of course, they're living, breathing creatures, and sometimes they're outliers.
I was going to think briefly, another one is when we had Buddy. We did a lot of research on, you kind of knew more than I did. Well, you usually know more than I do about certain stuff. But I didn't realize
Everything. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I've learned everything from.
I'm just kidding.
Sometimes I'm really right about things, and you're like, "Oh, I guess we should have listened to you." And I'm like,
Yes,
"Yeah."
the student becomes the teacher every once in a while.
Once in a while, then
that's
I
true.
feel really good about it. Anyways,
That's true.
I always think about Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
I always think about Buddy and how he. I didn't realize that retrievers have that ability to have resource guarding because of what is it?
Parading.
So that was something new I learned about, and then we had to learn how to manage that behavior and not discourage him from carrying and holding things,
Right.
Because it's a very natural thing that he should be doing, So that's
We have to give them an outlet.
exactly.
Right. So the next resource guarder that comes in, we'll do the same thing, right? Research their breed, really research their breed for breed tendencies. Look for those and then give them appropriate outlets for those tendencies, because it's unfair to say don't feel this way.
The problem with him was his owners didn't know that was a breed tendency and were disciplining him for doing very natural behaviors, and then that because they were disciplining him for taking things that weren't
They were
his,
trying to suppress that. It came out.
it came out in all different ways, and then
It's like a game of whack-a-mole.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
so
All right. On that note, whack-a-mole. We should probably wind it up. It's been over an hour, and Jacob has to get to school today.
Yep.
So I don't know if we really.
I feel like this was just a rambling one, but
Oh,
it
well.
is what it is.
I think there's lots of information in there for those who want to listen.
And if anyone has any questions or comments, like we would love to do a Q&A eventually.
We had a follower reach out and say they think that we should do an episode of just answering listener questions.
Yeah.
And I would love that, but I need listener participation in order to do that.
Yeah.
So
If you have any questions that you guys have been like thinking over for a while, like throw it in there so we can like create a list.
Do a whole episode.
Yeah,
of
that'd be
just
great.
Answering listener questions for sure.
Yeah.
But I can't come up with them by myself. The listeners have to actually participate. All right, guys, we're gonna wind it up. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Dog for Thought. Bye. Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.